Hello and welcome to Gentlemen at Play. My name is Botchan and today I want to show you how I did my elf hero by Avatars of War. This is the blister, and as you can see it is a metal miniature. I intend to use it as a special character in my Highelves Army. That's why I will paint him in a color scheme that meets my other high elves. And this means he will be painted mostly in silver and blue, with some golden accents here and there, and of course with reddish gemstones. The blister contains a sponge, the base, and 3 metal pieces. This is the body of the hero. He has got a heavy armor and a chainmail made of little scales. In his left hand he is holding a winged helmet. His waving cloak is, for the most part of it, a separate piece, which will be glued on like this. Of course, this will leave a gap that has to be taken care of. The third metal piece consists out of the hero's right hand, holding a sword, and of the upper part of his bow, ending in an eagle-shaped tip. This will be glued on here. Well, so let's start by cleaning up the mold lines and putting the parts together. As you can see, I nearly finished the assembly of the model. As for his right hand, I drilled a hole into his arm and his hand, and, using a small piece of a paper clip, I pinned the parts together to give them more stability. As for his cloak, I just glued it to the main part using super glue. And you can see that there's a quite obvious gap between those two parts. I will have to take care of it. For that purpose I'm using Milliput Superfine, and I'll show you how to deal with this stuff. There are 2 rolls in the box, a white one and a more yellowish one wrapped into blue plastic foil. As a first step, I'm cutting off more or less equal amounts of both rolls. Now I'm going to take these 2 pieces and knead them carefully to create an even matter. By the way, for gaps like this I am more comfortable using Milliput than green stuff, because, as for my experience, it is easier to handle during the modeling process, and it also dries in a remarkably shorter time. With green stuff it is recommended to wait about a day until it is really solid and dry. With Milliput you achieve this goal within 3 hours. Then it is rock hard and may be treated with sandpaper and so on. And as for liquid green stuff, I don't recommend it for gaps like that at all, because you'd have to use quite a lot of it, wait endlessly to let it dry, and then you'll see that you will have to repeat those steps at least a second, more likely even a third time, because liquid green stuff quite remarkably shrinks when it dries, leaving a smaller but nevertheless noticeable gap each time. When the 2 parts of the Milliput are mixed together very well, you will need some sculpturing tools to apply it to the model. I use such metallic ones, and, in this case, I heavily rely on such rubber brushes. They have a somewhat bendable tip of different shapes, and with these it's quite comfortable to get smooth and fitting results. All you have to do is to put on a little amount of the milliput each time, and using the tools and some water you can shape it as necessary. As you can see, the miniature has got all its parts glued on by now, also the bow with the eagle-shaped tip. And I finished my modeling work with the milliput. Now I'm going to use Vallejo Surface Primer Black to paint the whole miniature. When the primer is dry, it is also much easier to see if the milliput work is really neat and smooth, or if it needs some aftercare. As you can see, the primer goes on very well and has no problems at all to stick to the surface, although I did not clean the parts beforehand using soap and water. But, well, it's metal, not fine cast resin. When you are wondering what I am talking about, please check out my Skaven Doomflayer video. I'll paint the whole miniature in this manner and show you the result. Besides that, I don't like the base that came with the blister, because it has a diagonal slot, and you would have to put the miniature onto this base like this. But if you do so, he is looking at the corner of the base, not straight forward. And in Warhammer Fantasy, miniatures look forward for the most part, not sidewards. It would be strange to put him into an unit, because he'd look at a completely different direction than all the other figures. So I'll use a different base. It's a Games Workshop one, with a copyright print of 1984. And, as you can see, those bases have the option to cut out an horizontal slot as well. So that's what I am going to do. Now the miniature is glued to its base and primed black completely. And I was happy to see that my milliput treatment of this gap was obviously successful. Now I'm going to use bolt gunmetal to paint all silverish parts of the model, namely the sword and the armor. This is the result. And now I'm going to give all these parts a wash with Nuln Oil. So I shake my pot very well and simply apply the wash to the miniature. After the wash is dry, the model looks like this. Now I'm going to use bolt gunmetal once more to give the silverish parts a first highlight, using the dry brush technique. I use a Citadel small dry brush, wipe off most of the paint on a paper towel, and then I carefully go over all silverish parts like this. When this is done, I repeat the dry brushing, this time using Vallejo Model Color Natural Steel. The steel color is brighter than the bolt gunmetal, giving the armor more shine. As a next step, I'm going to use tin bits to base coat all those areas that later will be painted with gold. Now the tin bits is applied. As you can see, it is a quite dark color, but it will make painting the gold parts much easier. I'm going to use Glorious Gold as a first layer, and when this is dry, I'll be going to use Seraphim Sepia as a wash to create some shades in the recesses. And after that, polished gold will be used to give those parts their final highlights. This is how the miniature looks when all the golden parts are done. Now I'm going to give the silver parts their final look, and for that I'll be using mithril silver to place highlights on the most prominent spots and the edges. Like this. The silver parts of the armor are also done completely. And now I'm focusing on the sword to paint it using color transitions. For that I'm using mithril silver and bolt gunmetal. I put those two colors separately on my palette, and then I'll put some drops of vallejo thinner medium to them to dilute them down quite heavily. Then I apply the diluted bolt gunmetal to the lower part of the sword, but just on the left side of the blade. Then I wash my brush carefully, and then I apply the diluted mithril silver to the upper part of the same side of the blade. Then I'm using bolt gunmetal and mithril silver again, but this time I try to blend these two colors together in the middle of the blade, creating a transition between the two colors. On the other half of the blade the procedure is repeated, but this time the bolt gunmetal will be on the tip and the mithril silver on the lower part of the blade. Finally, the backside of the blade will be painted in exactly the same manner. After this treatment, the sword looks like this. Now I'm going to base coat the cloak. For that purpose, I'm going to use Necron Abyss. Then I will paint the raised part using regal blue. And after that, I'm going to use Drakenhof Nightshade to wash those parts. Now the model looks like this. And now I'm going to give it more highlights. For that I'll be using regal blue once more, followed by model color Prussian blue, and finally I'll be applying some brighter highlights using Prussian blue mixed with more and more of that white. Now the cloak is done so far. I painted it using the named blue tones, and I also painted the ornaments on its rim using dead white. When the white was dry, I made a heavily diluted wash mixing Drakenhof Nightshade and water to blend in the white ornaments to the cloak and to give them more depth. The undergarment I painted using Codex Grey. As a next step, I'll be using Nuln Oil to give it a wash, and then Codex Grey and a mixture of Codex Grey and white to highlight it. This is how the miniature looks at this moment. The undergarment here is done. Furthermore, I used charred brown to paint the fingers, because I wanted to make them look like as if the hero had got leather gloves. And I also used the charred brown for the leather strips, the little bag and the quiver on his back. Besides that, I used dark flesh tone to base coat his face. And I used model color Prussian blue to paint the feathers on his helmet. When the blue was dry, I gave it a wash of Drakenhof Nightshade, because I intend to paint the feathers more or less white, starting from a blue foundation. Here I have finished painting the gloves. For that I used charred brown mixed with different amounts of Vallejo Panzer Aces leather belt. As for the feathers on his helmet, I painted them using Prussian blue mixed with more and more of dead white. I also painted his eye using white and black for the pupil. As you can see, I painted the face. For that I used dark flesh tone mixed with dwarf flesh, then pure dwarf flesh, then dwarf flesh mixed with elf flesh, and finally pure elf flesh. Besides that, I base coated his hair using Panzerace's old wood. Then I washed his hair using model colored transparent orange. Now I'm going to highlight the hair. I finished the hair using golden yellow and mixtures of golden yellow and model color pale sand. I also painted the bow using Deneb stone, highlighted with dead white. Finally, I completed the parts beneath his cloak using black and bolt gun metal for the sheath, Panzerace's leather belt to highlight all brown parts, and tin bits and glorious gold for the golden parts. The only things left now are these spots that I painted black. They are going to become gemstones. As you can see, one of the gemstones is ready. Of course, I'll paint the others as well, and I want to show you how I do it on this gemstone. The first color I use for that purpose is scab red. I watered it down and apply it, leaving a little black area in the upper right part of the stone, and a small black line all the way around. The next color I am using is bloody red. I watered it down as well and will paint the inner part of the area I just painted with scab red, but will leave a rim of scab red remaining around it. Then I use fiery orange, water it down, and using this color I paint just a small area in the lower left part of the bloody red region. Then the stone is nearly done. The last, but absolutely necessary step to turn it into a gemstone is to paint a little white dot into the black region on the upper right part. In this manner I am going to paint all the remaining gemstones as well. Now all the paint job on the miniature is done. All the gemstones are painted, and as you can see I already glued some sand to the base using PVA glue. Now I'll paint it entirely with Army Painter Quickshade Strong Tone. When this is dry, I'll paint some of the bigger grains using Codex Gray, and finally I'll give the whole sand a dry brush with Graveyard Earth. The rim of the base will be painted with Beastie Brown. Here the model is completed. After the paint job on the base, I glued on some static grass and a grass tuft, and now everything is done. I think this elf hero will be a nice addition to my Highelves army. Although he has got a very wavy and space-consuming cloak, it is nevertheless possible to place him into an unit, as you can see here. I like this model quite well. If you like the video, please leave a comment and share with your friends. Thank you and see you next time. Have a nice day.